So let's get right into it. This is, I don't know, man. This is a lackluster division kind of, huh?
Yeah, not very exciting at all. And we're starting with really actually not really the top of it. We're going to get to the Vikings in a little bit.
Right.
The
Vikings
Packers have for so long been the top of this division, the creme de la creme. But right now, at least fantasy-wise, I wouldn't be shocked at all if real life-wise, Rodgers, the Packers continue to take this division, even with their weapons significantly depleted this year. But ultimately, fantasy-wise, I am far more interested in the Vikings, and I look forward to breaking those guys down as we get there. So we will start with the Packers and how we do this. And I'll kind of go through my projections while we talk about this. I always start, and you can see step one. This is a great tool on rotoviz.com that I love to use. You start with your team level inputs. And so I've researched, and they make it really easy for you to kind of research. We won't do this for every single one, but just to kind of show you what Matt LaFleur, how many total plays he has, how is that compared to league average? As you can see, 2 years ago, minus 49 plays, -7, -9. So typically he's going at a slower pace than usual. Now he has even less firepower. So I did project them to be minus 27 total plays off of the league average in terms of plays run. And that came down to 550 pass attempts, 463 rush attempts. So that was a 54% pass percent, 46% rush rate, right around what LaFleur has been, with a little bit of bump, about 1% bump in rush. Because I do think they'll try to establish the run a bit more, since two of their best weapons are now coming from the backfield. So you start with your team level input, then you move over to market share. How does this work? So you got your pie. We always talk about the pies. I know you love that, Truth.
Love pie.
You get your size of the pie, and now you start looking at, okay, so what are the slices? How are they going to be divided up? So I don't think Rodgers, 96%, maybe that factors in them like taking a game off at the end of the year. He typically plays all the games, so that could end up just being 100%. Passing is not the most interesting, but rushing share, as you can see, I actually have, so the RB1, Aaron Jones. And
you got Jones and Dillon basically splitting carries.
Yeah, with a few more actually going to Dillon this year, which might seem crazy, but it actually happened last year too. So I do think in terms of the ground pie, Duck had a great comparison. He compared it to when the Saints had Mark Ingram and Kamara, that prime year where they were like running back 3 and running back 7. I don't know that Dillon will also vault up that way, but I think this is a similar type of setup where we might get a ton of great bruising rushing work from Dillon, but an insane amount of receiving work for Aaron Jones. And as you can see, 17% target share. That would be by far the highest of Aaron Jones's career. But the reason I'm doing that is because Davante Adams, of course, has left. And you can see a trickle down where last year he was right around 30% or more, like 3 straight years, Davante Adams. So that leaves huge ripples as to, is an alpha going to emerge? And as you guys can see here, 17% going to Aaron Jones. That's the most targets on the team, in line with Alan Lazard, who I do think steps up as the most trusted guy and leads the way. But only 94 targets isn't that much anyways, even as the true number one here. Christian Watson, maybe 13%. Randall Cobb, a few more targets as a trusted weapon as well. Maybe Sammy Watkins doesn't even make the team. So this is one of those ones that could change a ton in training camp. Christian Watson's dominating and looking like the next great alpha. Well, I might bump him up to 25 and take hits everywhere else. So this is definitely one that's a little bit in flux. But if the season started today, I do think Rodgers would lean a bit on his trusted targets, which would be Alan Lazard, which would be Randall Cobb, and most importantly for fantasy this year, in my opinion, Aaron Jones seeing a huge bump in targets with Davante Adams. And that's not just a number I pulled out of my ass either. This is something that if you look at the game splits over the last 4 years, Aaron Jones was on pace for nearly 2,000 total yards in the games without Davante Adams, and a huge part of that was a ginormous spike in receiving usage. So as you can see, that those are your kind of your market shares. Again, your target shares, your rushing share. And then from there, we move over to, okay, so how efficient are these guys going to be with the work we got? Sound good so far, Truth? Any questions before?
Sounds good. I mean, the Jones, AJ Dillon thing is really interesting. Like you said, they're basically just splitting carries. I mean, it's like 50-50. And I mean, the receiving work you're talking about going to Jones is such a massive bump, at least through your projections. I mean, you have Jones as your RB8 on the big board, and Dillon is your RB23. And for guys that are essentially splitting carries, I mean, that is very significant. That's the difference between like a first round pick and a, I don't know, 4th round pick, something like that. That's a huge deal. I mean, is Dillon a sneaky, Do you like him? I mean, it seems like you could maybe get real value on Dillon if you think he's going to get so many carries.
Yeah, and especially because he's fallen right now to round 6, 7, and
Right.
it's the ultimate kind of quote unquote handcuff with benefit that we always talk about. Because I do think on the ground, I mean, the guy won the legs. I mean, have you seen this man's quads? They're the size of my torso.
Well, your comment on the big board is those fucking quads.
Yeah, very, very insightful analysis for all you heavy hitters
That's
out
what
there.
people are paying for.
Very analytical driven approach here. But yeah, I mean, the guy is an absolute, he has elephant trunks for his freaking leg, like insanity what AJ Dillon has built as, and he looks good while running. Like he hits the hole well. He's got good vision. So I wouldn't be shocked at all to see this play out and him to be a great value because it is that handcuff with benefits if Jones goes down or misses time. And we've seen that kind of regularly these last few years, even if it's just a game here or there. Dillon's going to smash in any of those weeks that he's out. But I do want to return to your part too, because like the big gap, why are they so wide? An important stat that we cite on this podcast all the time is targets are worth over 2.5 more than a carry. And that's why, and PPR leagues even more so. So it's that type of, it's kind of like the rushing quarterbacks, right? It's that one stat that can like vault a running back to the cheat code territory. Truly is usually receiving usage. Think about Christian McCaffrey for so many years, why he was such a cheat code.
Jamal Charles.
Not too long. Yeah. But that's why I think Aaron Jones, a smash second round pick with that receiving work coming in there. And I do think AJ Dillon, as you mentioned, like a nice solid value in round 6, 7, especially if you've already locked up 2 running backs and now you just want like you're kind of filling your bench with upside and maybe becomes a usable flex. Maybe he becomes a true running back 1 the game something happens to Jones. I love this backfield with everything else going on this team.
All right, cool. Go for it.
In terms of receivers, you know what's crazy is when would you ever expect, and one of the big questions I've been posing all offseason is who's going to be the number 1 for Aaron Rodgers? Who's going to be the number 1 for Pat Mahomes? I don't have a single receiver on either team that projected inside my top 40, which is
right.
So I don't know if you have exactly where these guys projected in. I know Lazard was the top at, I believe, like 41. Ugh. I mean, it's ugly. If any of them did have like a true breakout and just dominated, I do think it'd be Lazard. He ended the season pretty damn hot. But part of me is worried that was with Devontae Adams drawing obviously so much attention. Lazard feasting on number 2s. I could see that being the case. He was the wide receiver 18, though, for the last 6 weeks of the year. So we've seen him have some pretty dominant stretches in particular in the red zone. So if any of these guys I was confident would just kind of blow out their projection and be the one, I think it'd be Lazard, despite the fact that Christian Watson has all the upside and all the talent in the world to be that guy. It just, that's why this is such a crucial target share and aerial pie to monitor, because nobody be shocked if any of these guys finish in the top 15.
That's what I wanted to say to you. Are we going to be looking back at this, I don't know, like mid-season or after the season and basically being like, I mean, one of these guys is really going to blow us away, right? Like we got these 2 apparently really mediocre receiving cores. Somebody in one of these receiving cores, or maybe somebody in each of them, is going to have a really big season, right? I mean, you got these guys. You said nobody's projected above what, like 40th, something like that with these guys on these receiving cores. I'm looking right now to get the specifics. But I mean, don't you think somebody's going to break out in one of those receiving cores?
You'd think so when you're attached to 2 of the top QBs in the game. I mean, logic tells you yes, but I don't know that I look at my target percent and really think anything's crazy off right now. To me, the big blow up is Aaron Jones. Like we were saying, becomes the Kamara light for Green Bay, for Aaron Rodgers, and he now brings his receiving game to another level. God forbid he saw the rushing work he saw 2 seasons ago as the running back 4 in addition to the receiving work. He would break fantasy. That's not going to happen with AJ Dillon here. That's the only reason he's not projecting as a top 5 running back for me at this point, is because AJ Dillon's such a good runner. But the fact that Dillon is going to see more work on the ground, according to me, and yet Aaron Jones can still project in the top 10 running backs, that's where I think this fallout is happening. And then you look at the Chiefs. I know we're going to them tomorrow, but like I just think Kelsey goes up to like a potential cheat code.
Yeah, you're right. I did kind of forget about Kelsey. You have Juju at 42 and you have Alan Lazard at 45.
I'm way lower on Juju than the consensus. I think he's one of the most overrated. We'll get to the AFC tomorrow. We have enough.
We have 16 teams for the NFC show. Meanwhile,
It was a good
meanwhile
comparison to draw.
we're
Similar
one
stuff.
we're almost done with one team and we're 16 minutes in. So
There
for
are
those of
teams,
you
though,
that are trying to settle in for a 4.5-hour podcast, we got good news for you.
Oh, we'll be going.
Right.
We'll be going for sure. But no, the only other guy to touch upon is Tonyan, who did have a monster year just a few seasons ago, but it was so touchdown heavy.
Yeah.
And last year when he was playing, he was a non-factor. So I have him for 606, and honestly, that feels almost too high right now. So I'm a little bit worried about that. I think he comes out within my top 15 tight ends as a result of this projection, but I think it might be also a little too high for somebody coming off his injury. That wasn't really a big part of the offense last year. He also might have to be, again, because the weapons dearth is so sad here.
I don't see him having a particularly big year. I really don't.
Yeah. Huh? I don't either. So yeah, it's a tricky pie to sort through. This is definitely going to be one of the longer teams we cover for sure.
What's the first one? We're breaking it in.
What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments, check out some more videos, and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.